Hi everyone, this is Marsha, and I'm the director and founder of the Brooklyn Caribbean Literary Festival. I'm thrilled and elated to announce the birth and launch of our brand new podcast, Cocoa Pod. Consider the aromatic cocoa pod and how, after carefully ripening under the Caribbean sun, it generously offers up its rich fruit in due season. Cocoa Pod by Bclf aims to provide a similar delight. Each episode is a seed, a nugget of an original Caribbean story told in the voice of its writer. Each story, an infinite gift by the offshoot of an ancient griot tradition. As a whole, Caribbean stories are like a mighty tree whose branches extend, offering shade and comfort wherever her children settle. The Bclf Cocoa Pod will burst open with the finalist and winning stories of the 2021 Bclf Short Fiction Story Contest. From my team and the legion of Caribbean writers behind us, we bring to you the warmest of welcomes.
Hello, everyone, book lovers, literary lovers, according to Miss Marsha, because she would say not just books. But welcome to season 2 of Bclf Always Lit. I am so excited to be speaking with the Bclf team. My name is Carrie Ann. I'm host of Carry On Friends, the Caribbean American podcast, and you're in for a treat. You are going to get to know the forces behind the brand Bclf. And so welcome, Team Bclf. How are you feeling?
Thank you, Carrie Ann. We are good.
We're good.
Pretty good.
Vibes on 1,000. We good.
All right. Awesome. So let's go around and tell the listeners, the readers, a little bit about who you all are. So let's start with Marsha. Marsha, tell everybody a little bit about who you are.
Hi, I'm Marsha. I'm the founder. Bclf first occurred in my brain, and I shared the vision with my friends and partners in the festival. I was born and raised in Trinidad and Tobago and migrated to the US quite a few years ago. And among reading and literary passions, I just like to make things. I like to work on projects. I like events, and production of all type is my passion. And so the Bclf kind of fell squarely in that field. And so this has become my single passion and obsession.
Awesome. All right. So Marsha had this vision and she's like, let me call up my friends and bring them in on the thing. So who was the first friend she called up?
My husband, Christopher.
All right.
I ran it by him first. And after, so if he doesn't count as a call that I made, the first friend that I called was Melanie.
All right, let's go with the strong male voice in the presence of all these women. So Christopher, like your wife comes to you with this idea. What goes through your head?
Well, to be quite honest, she's a woman who always has a lot of ideas. And on that particular one, I realized that's something quite feasible, something that was needed, something that she would always be passionate about, because each day I wake up and I see her massive bookshelf adorning our living room. I know she's been doing this, engaging in Caribbean literature from since she was a very little girl, and she brought it to me, the idea, and I gave her my full support, basically. It grew from there, a very small seed.
Awesome. And then Melanie, you're outside of household. You are the first friend. So tell me, what was that conversation like?
Absolutely. I remember exactly when she called me, and I remember what the conversation was like. And she said to me, Mel, what about a Caribbean literary festival? And I said to myself, the first thing that ran through my mind was, don't they already have one of those? Somebody has to have one of those. So I told her, yes, I'm interested, because I had worked with Marsha before. I know her work ethic. I know how she moves. We pretty much compatible. And I said to myself, this is going to be easy, but I have to get past the hump of maybe somebody has this before. So I told her, I said, give me a couple of days. Let me do some due diligence. Let me do some research, make sure that nobody called back in a few days. And I was like, we're doing this. But at that point, let me just say, I had no idea about the magnitude of what this would be.
I have a lot of follow-up questions. So I hope you're ready, right? Because I'm getting the little nuggets here and there. So the next Mel on the team for us, internally. But Melissa, what was the conversation like when, Marsha came and said, you know what, let's do this literary festival, Caribbean Literary Festival?
Well, I'm the Mel with one L. I was the last to join the team. I have known Marsha since I was 13, 14 years old, and I know her passion for literature. So to me, it was a no-brainer when she asked me to come on board. I know that anything she endeavors to undertake is with a passion, and she never runs short in anything that she does. So, I dove head first into this with Marsha, Christopher, and Melanie, and I must say that this is one of the best undertakings I have done in my life. I trust them with my life, and I just know that this is just the beginning for us, and it's going to be bigger than we ever thought it could be.
All right, wonderful. I want to go back to what Melanie said. Hasn't this been done before? Kind of processing that thought, like, what do you mean this hasn't been done before? So, Marsha, I'm going to come back to you a little bit on that. And this will speak to the importance of the festival itself. I mean, we know the importance of the festival, but beyond like we should have one, what is really the focus and the importance of this festival and its significance in Brooklyn? Because I know we have, and I probably should know this, I know we had Calabash in Jamaica at one point, but these festivals were outside of the US. So can we talk a little bit about the importance and the significance of Bclf in this literary world?
So Brooklyn stands as the gatekeeper to the north, right? As islanders growing up on the island, there's this outlook that we have where we tend to look, off of the rock for opportunities. It could be because of political or socioeconomic reasons. For whatever reason, kind of cue the Moana mentality. There's something off of this space for me, something more. When we think about looking outwards and pushing beyond the boundaries, Brooklyn for me is emblematic of that. And I know it's just not for me because the numbers match. We have the largest concentration of Caribbean people in Brooklyn. Brooklyn is synonymous with foreign. So even if somebody's coming to the US, a Caribbean person tends to believe it's either New York or Brooklyn you're going, right? And I think it's the gateway, it's the portal to the north. It's a place where a lot of Caribbean immigrants land before they then branch off or migrate further. If it's further north to Canada or, south in a move of reverse migration, Brooklyn has this really special place to Caribbean people and in the diaspora. Years ago when I came here, although I was feeling lonely, I remember just having to walk down Church Avenue and whatever homesickness I felt would be assuaged by just the sheer presence and weight of Caribbean culture. And then a lot of the writers that I loved and read have been groomed, schooled, have had experiences here, lived full lives here in Brooklyn, in New York, perhaps brought here by parents who were figuring it out and making a better life for themselves. And that has percolated into a lot of their work, right? Dante Cat, Smith Khan, he taught at Medgavis College. He wrote Jumbie Bird, and he and Sam Selvon were great friends of his. And so when I think of Brooklyn, I just think of it as a recurring theme, a recurring crucible to Caribbean culture and the spread of Caribbean culture in the diaspora. Everybody in the Caribbean knows somebody who lives here, right? It's where we come and we grow our wings and we gain our strength before we move on or just grow deeper roots. And then there's this thing that was taking place in the now, Caribbean culture just becoming more and more mainstream and just being consumed in greater quantities. The music and fashion and all of those things. And I'm like, well, why not the stories? Because that's where all of that really was birthed from.
I love everything that you said, right? And you called out one of my favorite books from high school. After this interview, I'm going to proudly show my very old, tattered version of The Jumbie Bird. It was just one of those stories that I never forgot from high school in Jamaica. And whenever I went to Jamaica, went to the Sangster's bookstore to try to find a copy of this book because it resonated
something that I
so
would
much.
do too, like go home and pick up books and come back with it.
Yes. I have a lot of those. Like another Jamaican classic is Spratt Morris. And there was another Escape to Last Man Peak, which was Jean DaCosta. Like, I love those stories. And so I love this idea of, not only bringing the festival to the epicenter of the Caribbean diaspora, but introducing the next generation to classic Caribbean authors and new and upcoming authors. So shifting a little bit, I know Marsha is the visionary, but the execution and the operations requires a lot. I've seen the undertaking. I've seen, well, not last year because that was COVID, but in 2019, I was able to witness the moving parts. That was Christopher on multimedia. So whether it's camera or some other element, and Melanie as operations, just moving all over, and Melissa just kind of filling in the gaps wherever. Which is that an accurate representation?
So Melanie, we joke, Melanie is a fixer. She's literally the person when something not going right or we're overwhelmed, it's Mel, fix this. I don't know how you're gonna do it, but fix it. And then Melissa had the mortar that just holds all of this together. It's just this magical adhesive bond that just layers everything and creates this kind of continuity between all of the work that we're individually doing. That's what Melissa brings, in my opinion, to the team.
All right. So everybody kind of knows a little bit about the festival. So switching gears, so I had the experience of getting one of Marsha's visionary, bright ideas. She's like, Carrie Ann, I want to talk to you. I want to do a podcast, so, so I understand very clearly the sparks of like, ooh, I want to do this. And how can we make this happen? So, we've done the festival in 2019. 2020 was a year that changed everything for everybody under the sun. So the festival pivoted and did a good job, a really great job of executing virtually. But the podcast, tell the audience the vision behind the podcast and why you decided this was an appropriate time to launch a podcast and add this to the repertoire of how BCLF would present content or entertain its audience.
With COVID, we just had to find a way to reach people. Like Marsh pointed out one day to me that, like we always listen to podcasts, she'd always send me something. And with COVID, it was an escape. Everybody being inside, everybody being
Welcome to the Bclf Short Fiction Awards 2021. I'm Celeste Mohammed, author of Pleasant View, a novel in short stories, of course. I will be your host this evening. And yes, do not adjust your sets. I am sitting in my house wearing a very sparkly dress because tonight, wherever we might be, the Caribbean American literary community has much to celebrate. Here's a recap of 2021.
Good night, how you going? Wherever in the world you are, welcome to the Brooklyn Caribbean Literary Festival.
Talking about that the cultural cohesion that we have throughout the diaspora, you know, like just and how we express that in literature.
I really feel that my responsibility is to the craft.
But the character speaks their truth, and you discover things in yourself.
Think about fiction writing as a way of resisting the idea politics is no more than rhetoric.
Storytelling is a big part of how we, I think, heal.
Sandra hated the way her kind was portrayed in these stories when she was a child. But as an adult, she knew that the stories were a blessing, a spell of protection.
There's this notion and this idea that maybe African or Caribbean mythology or stories that center these things are like a monolith, and that's so far from the truth.
In all our stories of every generation, it synthesizes that story with another generation, with past.
Only ancestral murmurs, mouthing words remind me, here he died. Aquí se murió, él falleció. These words in syllables his spirit does not recognize.
A rapture of Boricuas rising like we always knew we deserved to, like stars. Nah, like angels, nah.
I think in the Caribbean especially, we have to give ourselves permission to write about family, especially coming from that tradition of don't air your dirty laundry.
But I was just shy of 28 when I woke in the middle of the day and vomited. My mother brought me a double ration of water and I could see the worry in her eyes. Who is he?
A sense of community is so important. It's a really important element of resistance.
You have a story to tell, and if you don't tell it, nobody else can.
So, as you've just seen, the Bclf has had a busy year doing what it does best, being an advocate and cheerleader for writers of Caribbean ancestry, encouraging us to write from the unique lens of our heritage, and being a tireless peddler of Caribbean culture as expressed through literature. But the origins of this short fiction story contest go all the way back to 2019 BC, before COVID, which, as we all know, feels like several millennia ago. So it bears reminding. Back then, in 2019, there was only one award, the Bclf Elizabeth Nunes Caribbean American Writers Prize, which centered exclusively on emergent writers within the Caribbean diaspora in North America. In that first year, the prize was awarded to the Nuyorican writer, Amina Susi Ali. Que viva Puerto Rico, Nueva York. However, based on the overwhelming number of regional submissions, the Bclf recognized there was a need for a second award, an award for emergent short story writers within the Caribbean region itself. They recognized that there was an underserved community sitting, waiting back home, pens poised. So, enter the Bclf Elizabeth Nunes Award for Writers in the Caribbean, which in 2020 was won by a Trinidadian, Hadassah Williams. The Bclf was then able to give equal attention on both sides of the hyphen Caribbean American toward magnifying the distinctive literary voice, flair, and rhythm that comes with Caribbean ancestry. And have no fear, folks. The Bclf annual short fiction contest will continue to grow and evolve in step with the ever-expanding definition of Caribbean writer. So, 2 awards named for one lady. Must be a pretty important lady, obviously. Permit me to crow a little bit about the namesake of both awards, the Venerable Elizabeth Nunes. Elizabeth Nunes is a Trinidadian American novelist and distinguished professor of English at Hunter College, New York City. She's the award-winning author of a memoir and several novels, some of which have been selected as New York Times Editor's Choice, and many of which are taught in colleges and universities across the US. Professor Nunes has also worn the hats of literary critic, anthology editor, and even television producer. With her own immigrant history, Elizabeth Nunes became the archetypal Caribbean American writer. She became the scribe for a new generation of Caribbean immigrants to the US as they, with their offspring, journeyed into ownership of a hyphenated identity. And she's labored even beyond that, using her influence to bridge the worlds between African American and Caribbean American writing, knitting her words and actions together into a blanket of support for Black writing wherever it may be found in America. But tonight, we are most concerned with the Elizabeth Nunes, who has been the chief advisor, friend, and confidant of the Bclf from its inception. Like the person itself, the name Elizabeth Nunes opens doors, represents excellence in storytelling, and confers upon tonight's winners and upon the Bclf itself access and attachment to a legacy of pioneering academic, scholarly, and literary genius. Professor Nunes, if you would, please join me on stage.
Thank you so much, Celeste. That was a really wonderful introduction and really grateful. Thank you.
It's lovely to meet you.
Same here. We are honored to have a literary award in my name from that distinguished organization as literary festival.
Well, you know, it's probably a good thing that we're meeting like this via Zoom, because it's probably a good thing you're sitting down, because I have a surprise for you.
Oh, okay. I love surprise. Good one.
Well, not me so much as the Bclf has a surprise for you. Okay. I don't want to say too much, because it is one of those gifts that speaks for itself.
So do I get? Books which even expanded my imagination to writing, and I started scribbling at 7, 8 years old. I was yeah.
I think Elizabeth has always been a writer. My father reminds us when he was alive that Elizabeth entered a essay competition when she was, I believe in primary school, which she won. She also used to write plays and short stories, and the plays that she wrote, fortunately or unfortunately, her siblings had to perform in them. Elizabeth is always writing, always reading. She would go to Barnes & Nobles. I don't know if Barnes & Noble is still in existence, but she would go there and she would read an entire book. And when she would finish, she would purchase the book. Somebody else would say, okay, I've read the book, there's no need for me to purchase it, but she would purchase it. Once I asked her why, and she said, because that's taking revenue from the writer's pocket. She gets along well with all the siblings. I think she, more than anybody else, gets along well with every sibling and has no fights. And, you know, Elizabeth doesn't fight. You know, if she fights with you, then the next 10 minutes, hi, how are you? Everything is good. That's not me, though. So she's a good sister. She's a good sister.
Children want to be loved 100% by their parents.
Yes.
And a mistake a parent can make is to show that they love one child more than the other.
So as you can tell, I am in business, and I read a lot of nonfiction, and that does not make my mom too happy. She hears that, you know, I'm reading this book of nonfiction. She says, why don't you read a novel? Read a good novel. The answer is there, you know, and it's a lot better. It's a lot more fun. And so she looks at, you know, nonfiction being great as its own place, but she says you can get so much more out of a good novel. So that's the fun that we have. And so I'm starting to read novels, but here's the catch. The really difficult part is I reluctantly tell her I read a fiction book, because there's a mild bit of jealousy. Why isn't my son reading my books? So I can't share too much. I said, Mom, this is a really good novel. She says, well, I've got a better one for you to read. It's on your shelf. So as a little boy, I remember when she published, you know, When Rocks Dance, and it was fantastic. At that young age, I tried to open it up and read. I got past the first chapter, and it described childbearing. So I said, maybe I need to wait a couple of years, but it was a triumphant moment, and it really led to so many other great accomplishments as far as her writing career.
I wrote her first, I did not write it. I typed her first book, When Rocks Dance. At that time, Elizabeth wrote all her books, her manuscripts, by hand. And so she would bring these to me and I would type it. And of course, it was edited. And I must say that I got very involved in the novel itself, because When Rocks Dance gives a bit of our family history from our great-grandmother. It gives a history of the discovery of oil in Trinidad, and it gives a history of Trinidad.
I will say that reading my mom's books brings me back to Trinidad, and it's remarkable because she hasn't spent much time there in her life, meaning living there full time. She immigrated here in Wisconsin in the 60s, and so it was just kind of amazing that she's so Trinidadian. There is one exception. Well, she makes a great curry, but if I want callaloo and I want some other types of, you know, if I want some good pilau, I might have to see my aunt. So she brings other influences in, but can't beat her curry still. And I always saw either her teaching me how to write and being very strict about my grammar and my sentence structure, going in the classroom, and she was really committed to a lot of the students, especially in Central Brooklyn, just to help them excel as they continue to write and as they continue to develop as a writer. And then she went home and she was very disciplined and she did it herself. And I think it was a full circle between parenting and teaching and writing, and that's really who she was for me growing up.
The chair wanted me to teach creative writing. And I came there struggling, resisting a bit, but now I love it. Probably my resistance was, that you have a group of students who are looking at you and thinking, you're going to show me how to write a best-selling novel. I'm going to do that. And the fact is that it's hard work.
When I met Elizabeth, she was an established writer. She was a popular writer, being reviewed in the New York Times, national, international reputation. And I was just honored to simply meet her at first, with no idea that eventually I would become her publisher. I do know that she's a very disciplined writer and she has a tremendous work ethic. One of the ways this is revealed is through her large body of high caliber work. When she's ready to show a manuscript, it's always and inevitably in fantastic shape.
So my mother's work ethic is really rooted in, I believe, her education from the Caribbean and the discipline that she learned in the home. And she really associates that with writing. She often says, have a great story. Someone can have a great story, but it's important to have that discipline. And so what she does is try to tell aspiring authors and writers that your story is great. Just dedicate and be disciplined, sit down every day for a few hours and commit to a book, and before you know it, you'll have a novel. And that's how she's a practitioner, but she also tries to teach and encourage others.
Sometimes when writers deliver manuscripts, the ideas and the writing may be great, but there may be lots of problems, whether structural or mechanical. And I have to say that Elizabeth Nunez delivers a very clean manuscript. And I think she lives to write. She's of course a teacher, but I do think that writing is her calling, and she does it great justice.
When one questions one's humanity based on your skin color, when one questions whether based on your color you have a certain level of intelligence, based on your color maybe your morality is different. We don't have that in the Caribbean. There is no question about your basic humanity.
First encountered Dr. Nunez's work, that would be Prospero's Daughter was the first thing I read of his. I mean, I know she did not set out to be brave but for me it felt very revolutionary that she was able to take such a beloved classic Shakespeare play, The Tempest, and impose her worldview on that play, her view as a Caribbean woman, as a Trinidadian woman.
Elizabeth has done a lot to contribute to the growth and popularity of Caribbean literature, not just as a writer, but as a teacher and as a mentor. She's a mentor to many. Also, her early successes, she was having success at a time when very few Caribbean writers were well known. It was before Marlon James won the Booker Prize. It was before Edwidge Danticat. I believe Elizabeth has been writing for longer than Edwidge has.
So I think for me in that moment, in the early journey of me writing, and to see someone do that, to learn from someone who did that, and who is still doing that, was really something that was very formative for me in the way I approach my work now, and I hope in the future.
I think for her, she was someone that gave credence, gave respect, which was the entryway to letting Caribbean literature be read by African Americans, by acknowledging their contributions, kind of putting, in general, I believe, the community at ease and looking for ways to collaborate.
And of course, when we talk about Caribbean literature, there is no one Caribbean story or Caribbean literature. There's this incredible diversity, and it's reflected in Elizabeth's writing. But I can't generalize too much about Caribbean literature other than saying when one Caribbean writer succeeds, I think it does help to shed a light on other writers. We've seen that with Elizabeth, and more recently again with someone like Marlon James, where his tremendous success helps publishers and American readers to see, oh, I don't know what a Caribbean story is, or there's 50,000 Caribbean stories to be read, not a path that a bunch of writers have walked down. There is no path.
We are part of something greater that, we stand on the shoulders of giants. And I look forward in also looking back and recognizing the work that the writers who have come before us have done and continue to do, like Dr. Nunez, that, you know, we ourselves definitely do have a very special tradition to continue carrying out. And this festival definitely is part of reminding us of what has come before, whilst also charting a path forward.
Let me read the inscription in the book. I hadn't read it for quite a while, but I'm now reading it. To a wonderful sister, that's me, a great friend and a decent human being. Mary, thank you for the many hours of help you gave to me in writing this book. Love always, your sister, Elizabeth. So that in itself sums up our relationship.
Wow. Wow. Well, I am.
Well, Professor.
I am really surprised. I am caught by surprise, but this surprised me. All these people who kept a secret. About half an hour ago, I was texting my son saying, don't forget to look at the program.
Yes, yes. Well, I was going to ask you, how do you feel after watching that? But we can tell from looking at you that you're truly surprised. Yeah.
I had not a clue. I had not a clue. I know my sister Mary is a vault, so you can, it stays in the vault, you know. Son, no, he leaks. He
didn't this time. He did not leak this time.
He did not. Yes.
Speaking of leaking and ships and so, you know, something that I said and something that was echoed in the video is, I can't remember how the saying goes, what, a rising tide lifts all ships, something like that?
Yeah.
So you are a pioneer, you're an inspiration.
Thank you.
Me, myself, being a Caribbean person who studied creative writing in the US, I can't imagine how difficult it must have been for you when you started out. And so I wanted to pick your brain a little bit about this idea of the burgeoning of a Caribbean American literary identity. You know, because some would argue that we're undergoing a bit of a shift away from the UK and toward the US being an, if not, well, not the epicenter, but certainly an epicenter of Caribbean literary thought. So what are your thoughts on the prospects as they've changed, if they've changed from when you started out to now for Caribbean writers?
Well, as my publisher, Johnny Temple, said, when I started writing, they didn't know where to put Caribbean writers. They didn't know, and they still don't. They still don't know what box to put Caribbean writers in, because we are so multicultural, we are so multi-ethnic. It's you know, we can't be pigeonholed in one spot or the other. But the fact is, Celeste, you would have to make a separation between publishing and the craft and writing.
Yes. Yeah.
And I would say the center for publishing is in New York.
Right.
By that I mean the money earned from writing books is centered in New York.
Okay.
And just are in New York. And that is why maybe a lot of movement is moving to New York. But say that the book lovers, the true critics, the discussion of books, not necessarily here. You know, New York is a business place. It's
right, yes.
Center, but it's also a place where business is done.
Right.
So I think we're still moving towards it. I still think that, I mean, organizations, I mean, what Marsha, you are amazing. How you kept me, I don't know. And your accomplices, namely your husband, Christopher, and the other ladies who join you, like Melanie Painter and Melissa Harper, you are amazing women. And incredible. So what this Brooklyn Bclf is doing is really, I keep telling Marsha, she has no idea how important her work is, because she is pulling that. She is the gravity force that's pulling all attention. And in a right in the place where it should be, I have to say, may not many people want to hear this, but New York.
Yes, yeah. You know, I mean, in my experience, my limited experience, literary magazines and journals seem to be quite open to publishing pieces that might be steeped in our culture, but I found that the publishing houses are, you know, still very reticent. So what the work that the Bclf is doing to just bring awareness and to use their channels, it is very vital work. I agree with you.
Well, the thing is, publishers respond to readers, to the market. Mm-hmm. And so this is really a job for all of us, for the writers and the readers. And it's a job for the readers to bring that attention, because if the publishers see that they are readers for our work, begins with us.
What is it Chinua Achebe said? The voice of the people is the voice of God. So yes.
It begins with us. Yeah. I mean, the comment my sister made about saying that I read the book, but then I buy it.
Yes.
My realization that that's the way publishers would pay attention to us. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Good point. Good point. They pay attention to what is sold or bought. Yes.
Yeah, the market. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Well, I can't let you go without asking for your thoughts on the prospects of the short story genre, because I've heard it argued time and again that the short story is dead. It's had its heyday. Nobody buys books of short stories, but I want to believe that books like mine, Pleasant View, and other Caribbean short story collections are trying to change that, especially in our market. And I just believe that with the pace of modern life and the shortening of our attention spans, I feel like there's still room for more concise storytelling forms. What do you think?
Well, the short story would find its place in a magazine.
Right.
Magazines are going out of style. I mean,
yes.
That's the economics of it. Mm-hmm. When magazines had their heyday, yes, there was a place for the short story, but finding it more and more difficult to find a place for a short story in the magazine. Now, doing something that I find incredibly interesting. They are writing interlinked stories.
Yes.
Interlinked stories. And the stories may be interlinked either by a character who gets the stories, or it may be the setting or whatever it is. I was very impressed and inspired by that book. I don't know if you know Olive Kittredge.
Oh, yes.
But that is clearly interlinked stories, you know.
I'm so happy you said that, because Olive Kittredge is actually the inspiration, one of the inspirations for my book. And that's why I called my book A Novel in Stories, for the same reason.
Yes. So she opened that door.
She did.
And by my saying she opened that door, she won it on both levels.
Mm-hmm.
From the body of critics.
Yes.
She won those literary awards, but she was also a commercial success.
Yes. Yeah.
In fact, HBO picked it up and did from that.
I didn't know that. I didn't know about the HBO thing.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. So the thing to remember is this: when you get into that area about publishing, you're really talking about business.
Right.
And so for the publisher, and you're correct, that you no longer have big fat books like Anna Karenina or something like 1,000-page books. Although someone just wrote I was a judge for the Ernest Gaines literary competition, and one of the submissions was a 700-page book. It's called Love Letters to W.E. Du Bois, I think.
Mm-hmm. Right, yes.
That was the title. But that's unusual. So you find the trend is more towards a smaller book.
Mm-hmm.
And that smaller book, and you are correct. I'm actually reading a book like that right now, where it's the book, but there are stories one after the other. And they're interlinked, so that I could finish this story and go about my business.
Yes.
Get another bite of the apple. So yeah, that's what's happening. So I see
Yes. Yes. I'm happy. I'm happy to hear you say that. I think I'm going to have to move on, but I want to thank you for sharing your wisdom, Professor. As we say in law, my previous career, I'm guided, milady.
And I accept, milady. Thank you.
So now I'm going to yield the floor to you to announce this year's winners.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
One more time, I have to give all praise to Marsha, Messiah, Aaron, and her team of Melanie, Painter, Christopher, Aaron, Melissa Harper, for having the inspiration to have this prize. I'm supposed to speak for a very short time, but Marsha asked me to say a few words in general about Caribbean literature. And so what I wanted to say is, how do we decide that a work falls into the category of Caribbean literature? Is it because the writer is from the Caribbean? Is it because the writer has Caribbean roots? And then how far do those roots go? How far do those ancestral roots go? If we're talking about the great-grandparent of a writer from the Caribbean, does that make the writer Caribbean? But of course, there are other criteria. There is the question of the characters. The main characters in a work is the person, a Caribbean person, the main character. I would say that's one criterion. There is the question of the setting. Is it the setting in the Caribbean, or part of the book? Is it set in the Caribbean? There's the question of the reflection of the Caribbean culture, the music, the folklore. And there is, for me, at this point, I have written 10 novels. And for me, in every one of my novels, I have to mention the Middle Passage. I think it's central in talking about the Caribbean. And at the same time, also talking about our triumph. There is a question about language. What language do we use? Do we use what is called nation language, the language that is spoken in the street in the Caribbean? I have to say that the writers who won the prize, the two prizes this year, both fulfill those criteria. And I wanted to start with Ahkim, Alexis, the winner of the Elizabeth Nunez Writers in the Caribbean Prize. He was born, he was raised in Trinidad, and he still lives in Trinidad. His remarkable story, The Whalers, is truly a Caribbean story about Caribbean people, and it is set in the Caribbean. As all good stories do, his story has universal application, as it tells a universal human story about the universal human condition. That is the pain we feel when we lose someone dear to us. As the Caribbean artist as Ahkim is, he describes that pain as, quote, deep like the roots in the mango tree outside. I love that line. The Whalers is a story that those of us from the Caribbean recognize. It is the story of loved ones who immigrate and the conflicting feelings of betrayal and love that those who remain behind in the Caribbean experience. Here, the story is about 4 women whose job it is to wail for the dead at the cemetery. When one of the whalers who has immigrated to New York dies, the 3 remaining whalers go to her funeral and are surprised to find few mourners at the cemetery. The woman's son explains, not everyone was invited to come to the cemetery, he says. It was to be, quote unquote, private burial. The women are astounded. They may feel that their friend had deserted them, but they cannot leave her without a wailing send-off. They make such a quote unquote ruckus for their deceased friend that the narrator tells us, quote, Jesus woke from his slumber. At last, the spirit of their friend is able to leave the place, and to rest in peace in Trinidad. Congratulations, Ahkim. Your prize is well deserved, and I predict a great future for you in the literary landscape. You note, I did not say just the Caribbean literary landscape. I mean in the worldwide literary landscape. Congratulations. The second prize goes to Patrice Carrell Yursik. I should have asked her to pronounce her name before I started. She is the winner of the Caribbean American Award. Like me, Patrice, you immigrated to the US when you were just 18. I was 19. But you have maintained and treasured your Caribbean vision. And the criteria I mentioned earlier are evident in your work, making your story indisputably part of the body of Caribbean literature. Your story, Daughters 4, is a Caribbean story, but it is also a universal story that tells about the complicated and conflictual relationship between fathers and their daughters. Your Lynette Bailey is daughter number 4, of a father who has abandoned the mothers of his daughters to pursue his dream of being a steel pan man. He becomes a national treasure. He wins the Trinidad's Chacona Award, but he's not a father in the real sense of caring for his children. Lynette was a shy child. And so she was given the name of T. Marie for the, quote, shame weed whose leaves close at the slightest touch. But she is the one the police calls when her father, now old, and forgetting things he should remember, is in police custody. The shy child, now a 30-something woman, assumes a responsibility for a father she has not seen since childhood. And the story ends on a bittersweet note. Quote, this isn't the quote. The father who abandoned her, the father who is rapidly losing his memory, gives her one last gift. And here is the quote. As Lynette T. Marie is about to tell her partner how their life will change now that her father has come to live with them, quote, pan music starts drifting out of the window, the whisper of a melody becoming louder, more confident. Woman on bass, he starts to play. Ultimately, this story is about forgiveness, a universal story told within the Caribbean context. Congratulations, Patrice. As I said of Ahkim, I predict a great future for you on the literary landscape. Thank you both.
Yes. Congratulations, Patrice. Congratulations, Ahkim. Well, now it's time for us to meet, greet, and celebrate the winners. First up, hailing from Trinidad and Tobago, as Professor said, I give you Mr. Ahkim Alexis, winner of the 2021 Bclf Elizabeth Nunes Award for Writers in the Caribbean. Ahkim's story, The Whalers, prevailed over a short list of 8 stories. Writing with the sense of humor evident in the very best of Caribbean storytelling, Ahkim takes what might be considered maudlin subject matter, professional death mourning, and renders instead a joyful homage to ordinary folk and to our rituals of communal healing. Congratulations, Ahkim. Join me on stage.
Hi, Celeste. Thank you so much. Thanks to Professor Nunes for that, glowing introduction. Congratulations to Patrice as well for winning the Caribbean American Prize. I want to take some time to thank the judges, Barbara Jenkins and Faisal Dean as well. I'm very honored.
So Ahkim, spill the tea. Don't be so polite. Tell us how you really feel.
What?
How does it feel to be the
it don't have much to spill here, but it's a very, very nice feeling, very motivating feeling as well. Because I did enter last year and I was a finalist, and I said to myself, well, maybe I'll enter this year and be a finalist again. I'm content with that. So to win this year was, I mean, I'm very thankful again. It's shook, very shook.
So you exceeded your own expectations.
Yeah, I did.
Lovely. So do you write many short stories? Are you a short story writer particularly?
Well, I do write generally.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if I write many short stories, but I do make a lot of notes. And I have a lot of lingering sentences all over the place. So whether that becomes a poem or a short story, it depends. But only in the past, well, maybe like a year or two, I started like being very serious about trying to put those words into a story, short stories, I would say.
Okay, good. So the lesson for those listening out there, aspiring writers, is to take your jottings and your lines and consolidate them. You might just win an award.
You just might. I mean,
yes.
You just might. So
you know what I loved about your story, it bears something in common with one of my stories. You said this was one of your favorites from my book. You said you like 6 months, which is an immigration story. And your story is also deals with the issue of migration and the resentment or sense of abandonment that those left behind in the Caribbean can sometimes feel. Yeah. Can you tell us why you chose to focus on that aspect of the topic? Because, you know, migration is such a broad topic. What drove you to that particular area?
Well, a number of things. Migration stories always interest me. And I think it's probably because I remember reading a novel by Beverly Ann Scott called Is America Gone? And yeah, the title alone is something. So after reading that, I started feeling like I need to get more information, either whether it be factual or fictional, doesn't matter to me. And I remember going to paper-based reading some years ago, and you read 6 months, Celeste. Yes. Your hair was very different. Yes. And that did stay with me. So I came to this story with a knowledge of a very rich knowledge of migration stories. The idea of the abandonment is, well, I guess in my story I deal with two types of abandonment. That'll be someone leaving and someone dying. I think that in migration stories, we usually hear about those that are in America or UK exactly. or Canada. Not much about those who have remained back, how they feel, what are they going through. And to me, those stories are just as rich. The dichotomy between the two is something that I always been interested in. So I wanted to try my hand at it. And
I'm glad you did. Yeah. We are so glad that you decided to try your hand at it, Ahkim. So congratulations again. Congratulations. And I wish you all the best in your writing career going forward.
Thank you so much, Celeste.
And now let's meet Patrice Grell Yursik, winner of the 2021 Bclf Elizabeth Nunes Caribbean American Writers Prize. Patrice's story, Daughter 4, emerged as the top story from a shortlist of 6. Avoiding the common thematic cliches of parent-child themed fiction, Daughter 4 allows us to witness the humbling and homecoming of a prodigal father who was once a great steel pan man. The story is rendered with laudable restraint, but still manages to do what, in my humble opinion, all great short stories should do. Show us the emotional journey of the characters, but also offer a comment on the society from which they've emerged. In this case, a society which often fails to adequately memorialize or secure the futures of its cultural pioneers. Well done, Patrice. Please join me on stage.
Thank you so much for such a wonderful understanding of my story and also an introduction. I want to say thank you to Professor Nunez also for being the the person who this is all in tribute to, and for creating a pathway for us to follow, whether we're at home or abroad. And I mean, I have to just say, my heart is so full. Thank you to the Brooklyn Caribbean Literary Festival, Marsha and Melissa and Melanie and Christopher. Your work is just taking us to places that we have long deserved to go, and giving us opportunities to show the world what we're capable of in a way that so many of us have been waiting to do for so long. Your work in celebrating our culture and uplifting our creativity is necessary and important. And we're in a time now where, you know, the world is becoming so much more global. We're all locked in together. The opportunities are there. And thank you for ushering us into the spaces that we deserve to be in.
Well, Patrice,
yes.
let's be honest. You are also one of those pioneers. You were an early adopter of the whole beauty blogging, you know, thing.
Yep.
And so we know you best as Afrobella. But many would be surprised to learn that this isn't your first venture into short story writing or creative writing generally, is it?
No, I've long wanted to put my fiction at the forefront. It's been on the back burner for too many years. My background, I mean, how far back you want me to go? I have an MFA in fiction that has been gathering dust. You know, I have projects. I have a short story collection that I wrote in 2004 that I never really did anything with because I wound up being pulled into this world of newspaper writing and magazine writing and blogging and creating a new pathway and trying to sustain a career and a life. Took the forefront for longer, and it took me away from my foundational dreams. So I feel in many ways I'm going back to my beginnings, and to be seen by my original peers is just something I can't even put into words how it makes me feel.
Girlfriend, I completely understand, because this is also my second time around, you know,
going home again.
So I understand. And you know, I really wanted to ask you, I was so surprised, pleasantly surprised. I was touched. I was taken aback. Your depiction of a steel pan man in all his faded glory was so true to life and so touching. I could see the man. I could hear him playing Woman on the Bass.
Yes.
You know, I have never seen someone approach the whole steel pan movement from that direction, that very intimate, tender, family-like direction. So tell me, what inspired the story?
These stories and these characters have been waking me up at ungodly hours. Like literally, even this morning, I woke up with a story that I just had to start writing. And I feel like there's a backlog inside of me. T. Marie and Frederick Bailey are characters that are real to us in so many ways. You know, you can look at a person like this and see so many of our legendary figures, not just in steel pan, but in mass making, in calypso, in any of our cultural forms, you know. And the story of family, being destroyed or not ever having really been fully formed in the first place is something that resonates so much with not just me, and not because of my own family history, but just because of the life that we've lived at home and the lives that we've seen around us. So I wanted to try to tell a story that I could identify as being almost a little bit too real. When you say restraint, it means a lot to me, because this story, and I was supposed to enter the competition last year, I tend to write very long and I struggle with that. So this story got up to as much as over 4,000 words, and then I had to cut back and cut back and cut back. So that is why when I hear you say restraints, I'm like, yes, because
But do you know why? Do you know why I said laudable restraint? Why I said laudable restraint? Because look, your sister here. I also write quite long. So when I read a piece of short fiction from someone who manages to do so much in such little real estate, I am very impressed.
Thank you.
Because it's something I struggle with in my own work, you know?
It's not easy. It's not easy because it's your baby and you feel like, oh gosh, I had to cut off the fingernail and then the hand and then, but, there's more I want to put back, but now I feel more informed and I feel so much more of a direction and where I'm going. And for you yourself, your collection of short stories into a novel is something that I am working towards. I've been having conversations with people in the industry and getting some of that feedback, that the characters need to relate, that needs to be in the same time frame. This, building a collection is what I'm working on, and seeing where an individual story fits into a larger collection is part of, it's like figuring out a big Tetris puzzle or something,
If I can give you any advice, I would say don't think that you need to go in chronological order with your stories. You write the first one as well as you can write it, and it opens a doorway in your head to the next one that you should write, which may not necessarily be the next chronological story.
Right.
But you have to go where the muse takes you.
Yep, absolutely. So, like I was saying, these people are waking me up, and some of them, the stories that I'm writing, I recognize now that some of them are meant to be bigger. Yeah. And that kind of scares me in some ways. The idea of sustaining something that couldn't be as big as a novel. Elizabeth, earlier you mentioned something that was 700 pages. I'm like, I cannot imagine the endeavor of creating something so grand. But baby steps, and the writers that inspired me. I think about 4-Day Morning by Samuel Salvon is one of the fundamental books that made me want to write. Olive Senior's Summer Lightning. Those are the collections that hit me. And now, there's Disha Filior's The Secret Life of Church Ladies. Like those contemporary short story collections are going to new places. Mm-hmm. And there's new possibilities that I feel are on the horizon. So I'm excited to see where this takes me.
And we are excited to see where it takes you, Patrice. So thanks for chatting again, and congratulations again and again and again to both you and Ahkim. Well, folks, there you have it. The winners of the 2021 Bclf Short Fiction Awards, Patrice Grell Yursik and Ahkim Alexis. If we could, just one last time, if we could have them on screen together, so we can see them together. Congratulations, guys.
And congratulations.
Thank you.
Well, you can read or listen to their stories via the links that will be pasted in the chat. And I hope they've inspired those of you tuned in tonight who may be toying with the idea of writing your own short stories. Please keep working at your craft. And please do follow the Bclf and all their channels on social media, including Cocoa Pod and Always Lit. Links in the chat. These provide valuable resources for enjoying Caribbean American literature and locating opportunities within this literary space, and for finding out the dates of the next Bclf Short Fiction Story Contest. And to anyone else who loves Caribbean writing and wants to see it continue to go places in America, please donate to the Bclf, attend their events, buy books and merch directly from their online store. Every little bit helps. Which reminds me, we need to say a special loud thank you to Elizabeth, Professor Elizabeth Nunes, Lauren Frances Sharma, Christopher Shaw, and everyone else whose kind contributions have helped fund tonight's prizes. So, I am Celeste Mohammed, author of Pleasant View, a novel in short stories. On behalf of Bclf, I say thank you for joining us. Happy holidays to all, and to all a good night.
Oh.